Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदानेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। बोलो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की
जय।
बोलो श्री श्रीमद् भागवतम की
जय।
हरे कृष्णा
एवरीबॉडी।
कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा निशा
हरे कृष्ण।
लो प्रेम हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा प्रेम
हरे कृष्ण।
ऑलराइट सर, चलो विल स्टार्ट। कल हम लोग 22 श्लोक पढ़ रहे थे 13वें अध्याय का 7th स्कंद, और अभी हम वो पढ़ रहे हैं कि प्रहलाद महाराज गोज नियर द कावेरी रिवर, और वहां पर एक महात्मा या ऐसे ही लेटे हुए होते हैं, एंड प्रहलाद महाराज रिकॉग्नाइजेस, एंड देन सो ही इज एक्चुअली टॉकिंग टू दैट महात्मा, जिनको बताया कि अजगर के समान वो वहां पे एक ही जगह पर स्थिर थे, एंड बट प्रहलाद महाराज रिकॉग्नाइजिंग या he is talking to the Mahatma. That's what we are reading right now. So yesterday we read 22nd श्लोक actually. इसमें यह था कि नारायण, the supreme personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulences, is predominant within the core of your heart because of your being a pure devotee. So then Prahlad Maharaj asked the question to Mahatma that how come you are just like lying here, not doing anything, right? And that's what the reply is giving. So Mahatma is replying to Prahlad Maharaj, and he's telling Prahlad Maharaj that you are already, you are already full of all opulences because you are a pure devotee. So Mahatma recognizes Prahlad Maharaj, right? And he's saying, Yasya Narayano Devo, and he says, Bhaktya Keval Ajnanam Dhunoti. He's saying that he always drives away all the darkness of ignorance as the sun drives away the darkness of the universe. So, Bhaktya, the bhakti, what does it do? Keval Ajnanam Dhunoti, which means it drives away all the darkness of ignorance, similar to Dhvantam Akrivat. Akra is Surya Bhagwan, right? Like the sun always drives away the darkness of the universe, is what is mentioned. I will read the purport again. Nice purport. Let's read this, Anilji.
Yeah, the words Bhakta Kevalaya indicate that simply by executing devotional service, one can become full of all knowledge. Krishna is the master of all knowledge. Aishwarasya Samagasya Virasya Yasataha Priyaha. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridayese Arjuna Tishati. And when the Lord is pleased with the devotee, the Lord instructs him. Only to the devotees, however, does the Lord give instructions by which to advance further and further in devotional service. To others, the non-devotees, the Lord gives instructions according to the manner of their surrender. The pure devotee is described by the words Bhaktya Kevalaya. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains that Bhaktya Kevalaya means Jnana Karmadi Amistraya unmixed with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. Simply surrendering at the lotus feet is the cause of all a devotee's enlightenment and awareness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, clearly mentions that the Lord gives the instructions to the devotees. Yeah. Ajay?
तथापि ब्रूमहे प्रशांस्तव राजन्याश्रुतं संभाषणीयो हि भवनात्मनः शुद्धिमिच्छिता. My dear king, although you know everything, you have posed some questions which I shall try to answer according to what I have learned by hearing from authorities. I cannot remain silent in this regard, for a personality like you is just fit to be spoken to by one who desires self-purification. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So that Sant, jo lete hue the, he is telling Prahlad Maharaj that you are already a big devotee, right? Mahabhagavatam. But, right, like although you know everything, but you have posed some questions. Tathapi, right? Brumahe is asked the Prashna. Yeah. He asked some Prashna. So he's saying that he will tell Yatha Shrutam. Yatha Shrutam means I'll try to answer according to what I have learned by hearing from authorities. Yeah. And so he's saying, even though generally he remains silent, he will not remain silent because Shuddhi Michita, right? Like you are devotee and you ask for or desiring the self-purification. Nisha?
A saintly person does not wish to speak to anyone and everyone, and he is therefore grave and silent. Generally, a common man does not need to be advised unless one is prepared to take instructions. It is said that a saintly person should not address him, although sometimes, because of great kindness, a saintly person speaks to ordinary men. As for Prahlad Maharaj, however, since he was not a common ordinary man, whatever question he posed would have to be answered, even by a great or exalted personality. Therefore, the saintly Brahman did not remain silent but began to answer. These answers, however, were not concocted by him. Hare Krishna.
No. Prem, sir?
This is indicated by the words Yathas Srutam, meaning as I have heard from authorities. In the Parampara system, when the questions are bona fide, the answers are bona fide. No one should attempt to create or manufacture answers. One must refer to the Shastras and give answers according to Vedic understanding. The words Yathas Shrutam refers to Vedic knowledge. The Vedas are known as Shruti because this knowledge is received from authorities. The statements of the Vedas are known as Shruti Pramana. One should quote evidence from the Shruti, the Vedas, or Vedic literature, and then one's statement will be correct. Otherwise, one's word will proceed from mental concoction. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. If it's not based on the Shastras, it's basically based on mental concoction, right? And it's mentioned very clearly, yeah, that one must refer to the Shastras and then give the answers according to Vedic understanding. I think, Ajay, we were talking about it, right? You sent something and so here's the answer, right? Already. One must refer to Shastras because otherwise it's all mental concoction from so many different people. Yeah. Krishnaya bhavahinya yoge kamera purya karmani karyamamoham nana yoni suyojita. Because of insatiable material desires, I was being carried away by the waves of material nature's laws. And thus, I was engaging in different activities, struggling for existence in various forms of life. Who is speaking right now?
Sant Maharaj.
Sant Maharaj, right? The Sadhu Mahatma who is lying there near Kaveri river. He is speaking and he's telling Prahlad Maharaj that Krishna, right, as we know, lot of material desires. Yeah, because of that, what has been happening? He's struggling for existence in various forms of life. Nana yonishu yojita. So he's not just talking about this life. He's saying because of the material nature's laws, because of all these material desires, I was engaged in different activities, right? Karmani kari mano aham. Yeah, I was engaging in different activities. And Nana yonishu yojita is struggling for existence in various forms of life. Is what the Sadhu Mahatma is telling Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah. So read this purport, nice purports. So read this, Anilji.
As long as a living entity wants to fulfill various types of material desire, he must continuously change from one body to another to accept another. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains that as a small piece of grass falls in a river and is tossed about with different types of wood and tree branches, the living entity floats in the ocean of material existence and is dashed and tossed amidst material conditions. This is called the struggle for existence. One kind of fruitive activity causes the living being to take one form of body, and because of actions performed in that body, another body is created. One must therefore stop these material activities, and the chance to do so is given in the human form of life. Specifically, our energy to act should be engaged in the service of the Lord. For them, for, for then materialistic activities will automatically stop. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so very important paragraph, right? So what is mentioned here is, like it's said that a small piece of grass, if it's in a river, yeah, it will keep floating around in different types of wood and branches and everywhere else. Similarly, the living entity, which is what we are, right? The living entities, we are also floating in the ocean of material existence. And based on our karmas, we are taking one form of body and then another form of body based on the actions and the reactions. So what needs to be done, right? So what needs to be done is one must therefore stop these material activities. And how do you stop? We cannot just stop the activities, right? And the chance to do so is given in the human form of life. If any other forms, right, 8.4 million species like animals and all that, they just cannot stop the material activities. Even in a human form of life, we cannot just stop the material activities, right? But a chance is given, and the chance is that if our energy to act should be engaged in the service of the Lord, right? Which means all the materialistic karma, everything we are doing, if we surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, and every activity is dedicated to Him, then what happens is all the material activities does not result in any reaction. When there is no reaction, there are no creative activities reaction, there is no karmas, and this is how you get rid of the material activities, right? That's what is essentially mentioned. Ajay?
Sure. One must fulfill one's desire by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord, for he knows how to fulfill them. Even though one may have material desires, one should therefore engage in the devotional service of the Lord that will purify one's struggle for existence. Akamaha, akamaha, sarva kameo va, moksha kama, udradhush, udradhish, udradhi tiverna, bhakti yogena, yajita purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desires, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole, the personality of Godhead. Bhagavad 2.3.10. Anyabhilasita sunyam jnana karmadi andarvatam anukulena krishanu sitanam bhaktir uttama. One who should render transcendental, loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities of philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. Bhakti Rasamra Sindhu 1.1.11. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nisha?
यदृच्छया लोकमेमं प्राप्तिः कर्मभिर्भ्रमन् स्वर्गापवर्गयोद्वारं तिरश्चां पुनरस्य च. In the course of evolutionary process which is caused by fruitive activities due to undesirable material sense gratification, I have received this human form of life, which can lead to heavenly planets, to liberation, to the lower species, or to rebirth among human beings. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So the Sant, the Sadhu Mahatma, is telling Prahlad Maharaj that by all these fruitive activities, he has now become a human life. He has got the human life. And what he's saying that in this evolutionary process, right, yadaricha lokam imam prapitah. Karma bhi brahmana, right? Based on the karmas, Brahman, right, he can still keep going around, and based on the karma he is going to do in this human form of life, he can go to what? Swarg upvarg yodwaram tiraksha punarasya, or he can come back as a human life. I have received this human form of life. Now, based on the karmas, he can go to heavenly planets, he can get the liberation, go to the lower species, yeah, tiraksham, or to rebirth among human beings, is what he is telling to Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah. So read this, Prem.
Material life is called pavarg because here we are subject to 5 different states of suffering, represented by the letters of pa, bha, pa, fa, ba, bha, and ma. Pa means parishrama, very hard labor. Fa means fena, or foam from the mouth. For example, sometimes we see a horse foaming at the mouth with heavy labor. Ba means vyartha, disappointment. In spite of so much hard labor, at the end we find disappointment. Bha means bhaya, or fear. In material life, one is always in the blazing fire of fear, since no one knows what will happen next. Finally, ma means mrityu, or death. When one attempts to nullify all these 5 different statuses of life, pa, fa, ba, va, and ma, one achieves aparvaga, or liberation from the punishment of material existence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Tatrapi dampatinam che sukhyanyanupate karmani kurvatam drishtva nirvatvasmi viprayam. In this human form of life, man and woman unite for the sensual pleasure of sex. But by actual experience, we have observed that none of them are happy. Therefore, seeing the contrary results, I have stopped taking part in materialistic activities. Right? So the Sadhu Mahatma continues to explain this to Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah? Anilji?
Sukmasyatmano rupam sarve ho paritistano manah sansparshjana drastva bhoganva syami sambhishana. The actual form of life for the living entities is one of spiritual happiness, which is real happiness. This happiness can be achieved only when one stops all materialistic activities. Material sense enjoyment is simply an imagination. Therefore, considering this subject matter, I have ceased from all material activities and am lying down here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah? So the Sadhu Mahatma is replying to Prahlad Maharaj's question. And the question was, why are you lying here, not doing any activities? And so he's just responding to him. And he's saying the real happiness is one of the spiritual happiness. The Sukham Asha Atmano Rupam. Yeah. So that's why he has He's just lying down there, is what he's saying. Huh? Nisha?
इत्येतदात्मनः स्वार्थं सन्त विस्मृत्य वै पुमान् विचित्रामसति द्वैते घोरामान् प्रोक्ति संस्कृतम्. In this way, the conditioned soul living within the body forgets his self-interest because he identifies himself with the body. Because the body is material, his natural tendency is to be attracted by the varieties of material world. Thus, the living entity suffers from miseries of material existence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, our original position is already surrendered to Lord Shri Krishna, but in this way, the conditioned soul, yeah, what happens is Vismritya Vepuman. Yeah, we forget the self-interest which is really in the soul. Yeah, and we start identifying ourselves with the body, is what is mentioned here. Yeah, and that because you're identifying with the body, the living entity suffers the miseries of material existence. Yeah. Ajay?
Everyone is trying to be happy because, as explained in the previous verse, Sukham asatyamanu rupam sarve hope prabhatis tanu. When the living entity in his original spiritual form, he is happy by nature. There is no question of miseries for the spiritual being. As Krishna is always happy, the living entities who are his parts and parcels are also happy by nature. But because of being put with the material world and forgetting their eternal relationship with Krishna, they have forgotten their real nature. Because every one of us is a part of Krishna, we have a very affectionate relationship with him. But because we have forgotten our identities and are considering his body to be self, we are affected by all the troubles of birth, death, old age, and disease. This misconception in materialistic life continue unless and until one comes to understand his relationship with Krishna. The happiness sought to be conditioned soul is certainly only illusion, as explained in the next verse. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So because of our identity with this body is a misconception. Yeah. What happens? We are afflicted by all the troubles of birth, death, old age, and disease because we think we are this body, which is a misconception. We really need to understand our relationship with Krishna. Hare Krishna, Sachin.
Hare Krishna. Jalam tadud bhagvaish shashannam hitvagyo jalaka kamyaya mrugatrishna mupadhavetta dhanyatradruka swataha. Just as a deer, because of ignorance, cannot see the water within a well covered by grass, but runs after water elsewhere, the living entity covered by the material body does not see the happiness within himself, but runs after happiness in the material world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, this is what Sadhu Mahatma is telling to Prahlad Maharaj. Prem.
Dehadi bhi tav tanyat ratman sukmihitam dukhashyam chanishya kriya modha krita krita. The living entity tries to achieve happiness and rid himself of the causes of distress. But because the various bodies of the living entities are under the full control of material nature, all his plans in different bodies, one after another, are ultimately baffled. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Okay, nice purport. Let's read this, Anilji.
Because the materialist is in gross ignorance of how the laws of material nature act upon him as a result of this fruitive activity, He mistakenly plans to enjoy bodily comfort in the human form of life through so-called economic development, through pious activities for elevation to the higher planetary systems, and in many other ways, but factually he becomes the victim of the reactions of his fruitive activities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated as the Supersoul within the cores of the hearts of all living entities. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Sarvasya aham hriday sannivisto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The desires and the activities of the living being are observed by the Supersoul, who is the Upadrashta, the observer, and who orders material nature to fulfill the various desires of the living being. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Ajay?
As clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita 18.61, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriday Dese Rajuna Tisai Tisati Brahmanan Sarva Bhutyani Yantra Udhani Mayaya. The Lord is situated in everybody's heart, and as one desires, the Lord gives one various types of bodies, which are like matching, riding machines. Riding on such a machine, the living entity wanders through the universe under the control of material nature and its modes. Thus, the living being is not at all free to act, but is finally under the control of material nature, which is fully under the control of Supreme Personality of Godhead. As soon as the living entity is victimized by material desires to lord it over material nature, he is subjected to the control of material nature, which is supervised by the Supreme Soul. The result is that one again makes plans and is baffled, but as foolish as he is, he cannot see the cause of his bafflement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. As a few important things mentioned here is that based on one's desires, right? The Lord gives whatever one wants. Yeah. And based on that is what we want. If we want this universe, yeah, we get this body and we are wandering throughout the universe. Because sometimes a lot of people will ask question, why am I here? Why am I being sent here and all that, right? Because we ourselves desire that, right? So based on the desire, our desire the Lord gives us. But once we are here, right, we are bound by the material nature, and then the law of karma acts. And based on the law of karma, everybody keeps getting into the birth, death, old age, and disease, right? Is what we have read. Now let's just continue reading this. Prem?
This cause is distinctly stated in Bhagavad Gita because one has not surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He must work under the control of material nature and its stringent laws. Devi he isa gunyami mama maya duratyaya. The only means of becoming free from this entanglement is to surrender to the Supreme Lord. In the human form of life, the living entity must accept this instruction from the Supreme Person Krishna. Sarva dharman parityaya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Do not plan to achieve happiness and drive away distress. You will never be successful. Simply surrender unto me. Unfortunately, however, the living entity does not accept the Supreme Lord's clearly stated instructions from Bhagavad Gita, and thus he becomes a perpetual captive of the laws of material nature. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sachin?
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणो अन्यत्र लोको yam karma bandhana. If one does not act for the satisfaction of Krishna, who is known as Vishnu or Yajna, he must be entangled in the reactions of fruitive activities. These reactions are called pap and punya, sinful and pious. By pious activities, one is elevated to the higher planetary systems, and by impious activities, one is degraded to lower species of life, in which he is punished by the laws of nature. In the lower species of life, there is an evolutionary process, and when the term of the living entity's imprisonment or punishment in the lower species is finished, he is again offered a human form and given a chance to decide for himself which way he should plan. If he again misses the opportunity, he is again put into the cycle of birth and death, going sometimes higher and sometimes lower, turning on the samsara chakra, the wheel of material existence. As a wheel sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down, the stringent laws of material nature make the living entity in material existence sometimes happy and sometimes distressed. How he suffers in the cycle of happiness and distress is described in the next verse. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so there again and again, right, it's mentioned that in the lower species of life, there is an evolutionary process. And when the term of living entity's imprisonment or punishment in the lower species is finished, he is again offered a human form. So how precious is this human form, right, which we have? We probably have gone through all these different lower species of life, right, and birth, and now we have got the human form. And then what is being mentioned is given a chance to decide for himself. As a human being, we have a chance to decide for ourselves which way we should go. And if he misses, again the opportunity is again put into the cycle of birth and death. Sometimes higher, sometimes lower based on the activities, pious or impious activities, right? Is what is mentioned. Right? Nisha?
आध्यात्मिकादिर्दुःखैर् विमुक्तस्य कर्हिचित् मर्तस्य कृष्णोपनतेर्थ्यः कामे क्रियेत किम्. Materialistic activities are always mixed with three kinds of miserable conditions: Adhyatmika, Adhidaivika, and Adhibhautika. Therefore, even if one achieves some success by performing such activities, what is the benefit of the success? One is still subjected to birth, death, old age, disease, and reactions of his spiritual activities. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so again, right, Sadhu Mahatma is giving this conversation, having this conversation with Prahlad Maharaj, and he's saying that based on all these different conditions, right, even if somebody can achieve some success, right, what is the use? What is the benefit of this success? Kame create a kim, like what is the benefit? Because it doesn't matter how much success you have got. One is still subjected to birth, death, old age, and disease, and the reactions of the fruitive activities. Anilji?
According to the materialistic way of life, if a poor man, after laboring very, very hard, gets some material profit at the end of life, he is considered a success, even though he again dies while suffering the threefold miseries: Adhyatmika, Adhidaivika, and Adhibhautika. No one can escape the threefold miseries of materialistic life, namely miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to the difficulties imposed by society, community, nation, and other living entities, and miseries inflicted upon us by natural disturbances from earthquakes, famines, droughts, floods, epidemics, and so on. If one were very hard, suffering the threefold miseries, and then is successful in getting some small benefit, what is the value of this benefit? Besides that, even if a karmi is successful in accumulating some material wealth, he still cannot enjoy it or he must die in bereavement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So first of all, we keep hearing about threefold miseries of materialistic life. Yeah. And so what is this threefold miseries of materialistic life? So the three forms are, one is called Adhyatmika, Adhidevika, and Adhibhautika. So Adhyatmika, Adhidevika, and Adhibhautik. So those are the three kinds of miseries which happens in this universe, right? In the materialistic world. And what is Adhyatmika? So Adhyatmika is, right? It says here, miseries pertaining to the body and mind, right? Like physical, the mind, mental stress, all those things, right? The disease, all those things are Adhyatmika. That is the miseries pertaining to the body and mind. Second thing is Adhidevika, right? So then those are the miseries which is created by the society. Yeah. As we know, a lot of miseries are imposed by the society, community, nation, and other living entities. Yeah. Fighting with other living entities and so on and so forth. That is called Adhidevika. And the third misery is Adhibhautika. So Adhibhautika is by the natural disturbances, right? Like sometimes earthquakes, famines, droughts, etc. So there are threefold materialistic miseries. So if you hear the term threefold miseries of materialistic life, yeah, we are talking about three different forms, like three different ways which can happen: self, body, and mind, by the societies and communities, nation, right? And then by natural causes, which is Adhyatmika, Adhidevika, and Adhibhautika. Yeah. And so what's saying is, even after suffering all this, somebody can get some small benefit. What is the value of that benefit is what is being asked. Right? Let's just complete this. Ajay?
I have even seen a dying man begging a medical attention to increase his life by 4 years so that he could complete his material plan. Of course, the medical man was unsuccessful in expanding the life of the man, who therefore died in a great bereavement. Everyone must die in this way, and after one's mental condition is taken into account by the laws of material nature, he is given another chance to fulfill his desire in different body. Material plans for material happiness have no value, but under the spell of the illusory energy, we consider them extremely valuable. There were many politicians, social reformers, and philosophers who died very miserably without deriving any practical value from their material plans. Therefore, a sane and sensible man never desires to work hard under the condition of threefold miseries, only to die in disappointment. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Nisha?
पश्यामि धनीनां क्लेशं लुब्धानां जितात्मनां भयादलब्धनिद्राणां सर्वतो अभिविशङ्किनाम्. The Brahman continued, I am actually seeing how a rich man who is a victim of his senses is very greedy to accumulate wealth and therefore suffers from insomnia due to fear from all sides despite his wealth and opulence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Dhaninam Lubdha, yeah, how is greedy to get the wealth, but bhai, right? He's still surrounded by the bhai and nidranam, right? Insomnia, because of the fear, is what he's saying. Yeah. Okay, like nice, but let's read this. So, Prem.
Srila Rupa Goswami advises Anashaktya Visayan Yatharham Upyunjuta Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. Bhakti Ras Matya Sindhu 1.2.255. Money is undoubtedly coming in great quantities. But we should not be attached to this money for sense gratification. Every cent should be spent for spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, not for sense gratification.
Sachin?
There is danger for a preacher when he receives great quantities of money, for as soon as he spends even a single cent of the collection of his personal sense gratification, he becomes a fallen victim. The preachers of Krishna consciousness movement should be extremely careful not to misuse the immense quantities of money needed to spread this movement. Let us not make this money the cause of our distress. It should be used for Krishna, and that will cause our eternal happiness. Money is Lakshmi, or the goddess of fortune, the companion of Narayana. Lakshmi ji must always remain with Narayana, and then there need to be no fear of degradation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, I think we are going to pause here. Already 10:26. Okay, and since we have been talking about bhakti, we are going to hear a nice kirtan which recently happened in the streets of Hong Kong. So let's see that. See how people all over the world are getting engaged into the bhakti process. Very interesting. We'll hear it for 6 to 7 minutes. Yeah.
Hare Hare तो यहाँ पर ये सिक्योरिटी गार्ड जो है संकीर्तन को रोकने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। और कुछ मिनट के लिए संकीर्तन बंद भी हुआ, लेकिन फिर संकीर्तन कोई रोक सकता है क्या?
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
All right. So you see on the street of Hong Kong, I think from last week. This reminds me, so there's a beautiful ISKCON temple actually in Hong Kong. So I've been there actually, and then also went on a walk to the same place. So yeah, it's not easy to preach and it's not easy to go and do the kirtan everywhere, but it's very interesting how there's a Radha Krishna temple, and then even in Hong Kong, right? Totally under control of China. Some bhakti, and if you see the people, they were so much interested actually. A lot of people, right? So anyways, have a good time, and then we'll see you tomorrow at 9:30. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.